Hey, it's Eli K. Atlas, and in today's video, I'm going to be drawing Leaders of the Free World issue number 1, page 18. I started the camera a little bit after I finished, not a lot, but pretty much the basics. So I'm going to be taking it from there. We're going to be seeing how I inked most of the panels, my thought process. I'll give you guys some insights into how I approached some of these panels and why I made some of the visual choices I did. So let's get right into it without further ado. Leaders of the Free World, page 18. So we're starting with Surreal and Eco. They're getting into a bit of a scuffle right here, or rather Eco is pressing Surreal, for lack of a better word. Without giving too much of the story away for this scene, so I got to be careful of that in this video. But basically, he's kind of threatening Surreal a little bit. It's friendly, I guess, but you guys will have to check out the context once it comes out. So for this panel, I wanted to give them a weighted look, and I've actually found that to do that, a lot of the time it's best to actually use less lines. So I tried to keep the lines more functional than visual, if that makes sense. I tried not to waste too many lines. I only put things where they needed to be, and it was the goal wasn't to make it so stylish. It was just to make it look like it should. And I know that sounds kind of funny, but it'll make probably a little more sense as the picture progresses. And now from here we move on to Eco. Getting his expression was actually not as hard as I thought it would be. He's got kind of that tough, maybe Wolverine-ish kind of pose, expression on his face. And there's a pretty big contrast between the two of them. As you can see, one guy's very scared, the other guy's very intense, very angry. And I always like playing with emotions on characters' faces. That's something that I've always been pretty into. There are a lot of artists I know that kind of, without putting anyone down or anything, kind of limit the expressions and stuff that they do. But I like going through the whole spectrum of emotions and expressions. And I actually did Eco's right here without a reference. I was pretty pleased with how that turned out. We get to the rest of his body here and his hair. I have a little shortcut for drawing like dreads the way he has. I just kind of shade one side of the dread and leave the other side kind of highlighted. And that saves me time from having to braid it or knot it or mat it or any of that stuff. And we started with panel 2, and then we jumped to 2, 3, 4, panel 4. And again, without giving too much of the story away, there's a bit of a, what's the word? A bit of chaos ensuing. I don't know if I can tell you which character this is if you haven't read it yet, if it's out by the time this comes out, but she's in a bit of trouble here, this lady who's on the floor, and Eco's looking very concerned. Again, it was important to get his expression right, and especially because of the camera angle. His head is kind of turned down here, which is always tricky to do for an artist. In the back, we were focusing on the back of her head here, so that was a little bit easier. But once the character's head is facing down, you have to draw it a little bit differently. The same principles apply, but the shapes change. Again, the goal is not the visual, to highlight the visual. It's more to highlight the functional elements. So the lines that I use on him and in this panel are pretty much just to give you the motion, the shape of his body, how he's bending, so on and so forth. The reason I add the shading to his abdomen is because it's kind of further and a little bit deeper, and the light wouldn't really go there because of how he's bending. So that's something that I always try to keep in mind when I do panels and pages like this. Doing Surreal at this angle was a bit tricky in retrospect. I think I might have messed some of it up. I actually ended up tweaking his head and his face a little bit post-production, which Photoshop, which I call post-production, and CG. I have a bunch of names for Photoshop, but yeah, I think I got the thing mostly right. It was just kind of his face and his head size and stuff. And the head size isn't even wrong necessarily, but I just wanted the perspective to be a little more dramatic, because we're right at ground level looking up at Eco and the lady and Surreal and his friend who is going to be in the background. So I wanted the perspective to be a little bit more dramatic. We can see the ceiling and such. I've mentioned it before, but I like to dress Surreal and some of the other characters also in clothes that I actually have and that I actually wear. So he gets most of his fashion sense from me, more or less. When I do background characters, a lot of the time I kind of indulge and do cartoonish, very exaggerated expressions and stuff, mostly because people won't be paying attention to it, and I can get a little bit of a laugh out of it when I look at the page, because I'll probably be the only one who notices the guy's like eyes are popping out and he looks like a Looney Tunes character or something. But yeah, every now and then I like to do that. Not all the time, because then it becomes too obvious, but every now and then I like to throw some funny stuff in there. I've done a video on this before, you guys. Make sure you never skip your backgrounds unless you absolutely have to. A lot of the time, if I skip a background, it's because I'm going to do it again in post, aka Photoshop, and I'll probably put an effect or something similar to that in place of a background. For example, in panel 3, which we're doing right now, for the background I ended up using one of the brushes in Paint Tool, so I called it acrylic. It gives a really nice texture, kind of layered, I guess a brush look. Yeah, pretty much a paintbrush look to the pages, depending on how you use it, of course. But the way I was using it, I wanted it to be kind of a sweeping brush looking effect. So that's why I didn't actually put anything down on the paper as far as the background. And I do actually have paintbrushes, but a very specific effect that I was trying to achieve, which I knew I could get with that digital tool. For better or worse, I do a lot of my characters and figures and stuff without references. I used to reference heavy back when I was practicing like a lot. Now I don't even practice so much. I practice, if I have to practice, I kind of practice on the paper. I like to experiment now in real time because I'm kind of comfortable with my technique and how I draw and stuff. Not to say I'm complacent, but I know what works and what doesn't work. So if I need to experiment and try out something new, I know that I can do it pretty much on the fly. So originally I didn't really draw Surreal's friend in the background, so I kind of just added him during this stage, which is the inking stage. Sometimes I do that to save time. I'll skip on some details during the pencil stage that if I know I'm gonna have to add it like later. It's another way to kind of pace yourself and make sure you're getting the most out of your time. You don't have to redo everything in every stage. Sometimes you can leave elements missing if you're going to fill them in later stages, and that's what I do a lot. So you've got the shocked expressions again. When you're doing background characters, it's okay to get a little cartoonish in my opinion, because they're far away and you're going to have to kind of simplify, since you can't always use a whole bunch of lines and a whole bunch of detail. So I like to kind of exaggerate just to get the point across. And as you can see here, now I'm adding Surreal's friend. He's holding a shirt from the last panel, or last page actually. And once you guys read the story, you'll see what that's about. So again, I can't give too much away, but stay tuned. It keeps getting better. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and share. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you leave them down in the comment box below. By the time this video comes out, it may or may not be February, maybe afterwards. So I would assume this book would have come out by then. If it has, I'll have all the links in the description. If not, make sure you guys stay tuned for that and follow me on all the sites that you're on. I am also. I'll have the links down below and in the description box, so you can check me out there. So thank you guys for watching, and hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys later.
سلام، سميتني سمية. عندي 16 سنة. ساكنة في بنية